Namo Vishnu Vraya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vicharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Askatyade Siddharane. So welcome everyone. Today we're going to read from the Bhagavad Gita as usual. Today it's chapter 13. The chapter is called Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness. And I'm going to read text number 35. So the Sanskrit is, we offer our obeisances to Prabhupada? Yes. Kshetra Kshetragya Evam Antaragyana Chakshusha Bhuta Prakriti Moksham Cha Ye Vidur Yantite Param. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Those who see with the eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in the material nature attained to the supreme goal. Purport. The purport of this 13th chapter is that one should know the distinction between the body and the owner of the body and the supersoul. One should recognize the process of liberation as described in verse 8 through 12. Then one can go on to the supreme destination. A faithful person should at first have some good association to hear of God, and thus gradually become enlightened. If one accepts a spiritual master, one can learn to distinguish between matter and spirit, and that becomes the stepping stone for further spiritual realization. Spiritual master, by various instructions, teaches his students to get free from the material concept of life. For instance, in Bhagavad Gita, we find Krishna instructing Arjuna to free him from materialistic considerations. One can understand that this body is matter. It can be analyzed with its 24 elements. The body is the gross manifestation, and the subtle manifestation is the mind and psychological effects. The symptoms of life are the interaction of these features. But over and above this, there is a soul, and there is also the supersoul. The soul and the supersoul are two. This material world is working by the conjunction of the soul and the 24 material elements. One who can see the constitution of the whole material manifestation as this combination of the soul and material elements, and can also see the situation of the Supreme Soul, becomes eligible for transfer to the spiritual world. These things are meant for contemplation and for realization, and one should have a complete understanding of this chapter with the help of the spiritual master. So the verse again, Kshetra Kshetragya Evam Antara Jnana Chakshusha Bhuta Prakriti Moksham Cha Ye Vidur Yantite Param. Those who can see with the eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body, and can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in the material nature, attain to the supreme goal. Oma Gyanatmirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. One time someone asked Srila Prabhupada during the class that how is it that you make everything so simple? And Srila Prabhupada's reply was that everything is actually very simple. There is Krishna, there's God, there's ourselves, the soul, and there's a relation between the soul and Krishna. And that relationship is now being manifested by those who are conditioned through the material nature. Therefore, as Srila Prabhupada once said in one lecture in the very beginning of the movement, that this philosophy is the most consistent, exacting, and voluminous due to the unbreakable system or unbroken system of disciple succession. So actually, what we're trying to do is make things simple. Maya means to make something simple, complicated. So, as Krishna had said earlier, throughout the Bhagavad Gita, the same thing. That we have to learn, first of all, to see with the eyes of knowledge. Unless we can see with the eyes of knowledge, we don't know what's to be done and what's not to be done. Generally speaking, people in conditioned life think that they're seeing with the eyes of knowledge, but they're seeing with the eyes of the mode of ignorance, the mode of passion, or the mode of goodness. But one should see things the way Krishna sees things, with transcendental vision. As Krishna had said in Bhagavad Gita earlier, Sattvam Rupa Sattva Sattvam Sanjayate. Oh, let's do that separate. This is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17. Sattvam Sanjayate. Text number 3. Sattva Narupa Sarvasha Sharad Bhavati Bharata Sharoma Yo Yam Purusho Yo Yaschara Saeva Saha. According to one's situation under the various modes of material nature, one has a particular kind of faith. And when one has a particular kind of faith, he'll act according to that faith, and by his activities, the modes of material nature will change, and he'll develop another faith. Therefore, we find that sometimes we get into a discussion with someone, and at the beginning of the discussion, they seem that they're 100% convinced about what they're saying. And then 5 minutes later, they say exactly the opposite with the same conviction. And if you point out that they've changed their mind, they'll get very angry and say, I always believed that. This is my permanent, eternal belief. And then later on in the conversation, they'll change their mind again. So that's because we're seeing things through the modes of nature, and Krishna's creation is so perfect that these feeble attempts for virtual reality are insignificant compared to the virtual reality that Krishna is projecting, called the material world. Now, Jnana Chakshush is what the main service of the spiritual masters are. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has told us, Yari Deka Tarikaha Krishna Upadesh Amara Aga Guruhana Taradesh. Whoever we meet, we should tell them about Krishna. Of course, what we tell them about Krishna will depend upon the super soul within our heart giving us information on what to say to inspire this person to hear about Krishna and eventually to take up the process of devotional service. Now that will depend upon our understanding of Krishna, our understanding of the people that we're dealing with. Krishna will give us intelligence in proportion to our qualification, as well as our desire. Therefore, for instance, if we distribute books or we talk to people about Krishna, then we're really depending on Krishna. Not necessarily, for instance, on book distribution, to tell people the whole philosophy in the 30 seconds we meet them, to explain everything about the soul and the super soul and the process of liberation. so that they could go home and immediately begin the process of chanting at least 16 rounds a day and follow all the regular principles along with their family. They go home and say, yes, I met a devotee on the street. He told me the whole philosophy. I've become convinced, and now my whole life is surrendered to Krishna. No, it doesn't work like that. Generally, for instance, Krishna, to give us appropriate intelligence, for instance, will tell us how to relate to a person we've never met before, we obviously know nothing about, in such a way as to inspire them to take a book so they can hear not from us, according to our level, whatever realizations we have, but they can hear from Srila Prabhupada and Krishna by reading the Bhagavad Gita. And hopefully within our society, we've organized our society in such a way is that when people get a book, they also get an opportunity to associate with devotees and to get their questions answered. What does this mean? What is Dharma Kshetra, Kurukshetra? What is Yudhamana Shavikrantas, Udamoja Saviryavan, Sobhadro Dropadeyas Cha, Sarva Eva Maharada? Who is Yudhamanu? Who is Sobhadra? What is this all about? So that's very good. If someone actually picks up the Bhagavad Gita and starts asking questions, that's very good. But of course, it would be nice if there is some place they can go to get some of their questions answered. Therefore, the beginning is that we're trying to present Krishna consciousness to people in such a way as to get them to read the books. And of course, we should also read the books. Otherwise, unless we read the books, then we'll think regularly and have a regular program, especially chanting Hare Krishna. For instance, this is the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And our acharyas have told us that Bhagavad Gita is divided into 3 different sections. The first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita mainly deal with the process of yoga, which we can come to the platform of understanding that Krishna consciousness is not a difficult process. It's a change of consciousness. It's not a change of our posture necessarily. It's not a change of our ability to put our foot behind our head, and then we get illumination. It's a process of learning how to hear pure knowledge so that our original knowledge can be awakened. And that knowledge is not so complicated as it says here in the verse, Kshetra, Kshetragaya Evam, that there's a Kshetra called the material nature, which is full of varieties. It's like the light. If there's very bright light, the flies or other insects become attracted to it, and they fly into it to their detriment. So the material nature is made in such a way, because after all, it's Krishna's energy, and therefore it has some of Krishna's attractiveness, but it's a dazzling light for the soul, and when he flies into it, he gets literally burnt. So the material nature is called Kshetra, made of all kinds of elements, gross and subtle, and made in such a way as to perfectly, more or less, create a dream for the conditioned soul that he's either Narayan or Lakshmi or Krishna or Shrimati Radharani, or more basically Tarzan and Jane, Romeo and Juliet, Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. Material nature is made in such a way as create this dream that I'm living as in my kingdom. My house is the spiritual world. My husband is Lord Narayan. My wife is the goddess of fortune. My children are all expansions of the divine couple, ourselves. Some of the children are plenary expansions, those who have some intelligence, and some of them are partial expansions, those who are not so intelligent. My car is my Garuda, and it takes me throughout the three worlds that I live in. This way we're dreaming. And the material nature is the perfect dream. No one can create a better illusion than Krishna can. And if we don't like this dream during this lifetime, then we can go to sleep and try to create our own dreams in our sleep. A more perfect world where my wife listens to me and my husband actually provides. And then we wake up to what we think is reality, and then we're still disappointed. Nothing has really changed. So Krishna consciousness is nothing but actually becoming awake. But people are afraid of becoming awake because they think the spiritual world is like this world. And if I wake up to reality, I'll have to live in that world eternally. And maybe it's worse than this world. Therefore, Kshetragya, which is quite interesting, not only the field, but the two knowers of the field. Now, our main problem is we don't know Krishna. And unfortunately, in Kali Yuga, the propaganda against Krishna is quite intense. Even amongst religious societies, there's a lot of propaganda that more or less discourages people from knowing Krishna. They present God in such a way as that, generally speaking, no one would become attracted to him as the person who condemns you to death, to becoming tortured forever. If you get on his wrong side, he throws you into the burning fire and you burn forever. Not the type of person you'd like to meet in a dark alley. And yet we're told we have to surrender to him, because otherwise a lot of people have been thrown into the burning fire and we could be next. Not exactly very inspiring. And then on top of that, there is so much false information given about ridiculous things like how man has come from monkeys and so-called science, although no one has ever seen a monkey giving a birth to a human being. Of course, we heard some people say that their brother is like a monkey, but that's not 100% accurate. Still, in the name of so-called science, so much nonsense has been proclaimed, like everything came out of nothing. So if everything came out of nothing, then why are more things coming out of nothing? But then again, science is not really science. It's mostly science fiction. But because people have become along with the science fiction, they also have propaganda that to be healthy, you have to eat meat. To be healthy, you should have as much sex as possible. To be healthy, You have to let your mind, you have to be creative and let your mind wander anywhere it wants to. And to be healthy, a little wine with every meal is good. You need a little something to digest that meat. So people are actually believing that being healthy, the very things that will make them unhealthy, they've been taught will actually make them healthy. And not only by, for instance, what we call allopathic regimens that they give, but even the alternative medicines are more or less become commercialized, getting devotees to, or people to take things that they're not really so sure what the purpose is other than that, but it's been declared to be healthy. But the aspect of consciousness, in other words, if you're riding a car and the car is about to break down or drive over a cliff, and you're adding vitamins to the car, obviously there's going to be some psychological problems. The fact that you're seeing that you're about to drive over a cliff, you need more than just vitamins. You also need some intelligence so you can steer your car properly. Unfortunately, people have been concluded by their so-called education that there's no soul. Not only there's no soul, there's no super soul. All there is material nature. And the whole purpose of life is to live as long as possible and gratify the senses as much as you can. And then after that, you disappear. And if you need some clutch, then you can take shelter of some religion that tells you you're going to burn forever. Or if you follow their mandates and whatever they tell you to do, then you wind up playing a harp or a horn forever, the same song, all glories to God, all glories to God, forever. Not a very attractive alternative. But this philosophy says, Krishna very simply says, that, for instance, if we all had a father and mother, and our father and mother had a father and mother, and our grandparents had fathers and mothers too. So where can we trace out our history of our family tree that someone didn't have a father and mother? They just popped in out of nothing. Does anyone know any relative who's popped out of nowhere into existence? Therefore, just by logic, we understand that if we all had fathers and mother, the original father and mother must also be a person. Otherwise, how do we become persons? If there's order in the universe, there must be a person who's an order giver. So therefore, he is called Kshetra Kshetragya. Namely, we're eternal, the first instruction of Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, how is it that our bodies, which are always changing, how is it that we're not changing along with the body, either gross or subtle? Therefore, this requires Jnana Chakshus. Kshetra Kshetragya evam antara Jnana Chakshusha. So throughout Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying this repeatedly. The soul is eternal. In spite of the changes of the body, the soul is not changing. One who sees with Jnana Chakshus can understand this. This is knowledge. We may get a PhD degree in something. We may get a master's degree or whatever degree we get. We may get the Nobel Prize for something. But unless we understand this, that the body's changing but we're not changing, then one is simply in ignorance. Therefore, as Prabhupada said, we should contemplate this, first of all, that we should choose leaders who actually understand this. Otherwise, as Prabhupada said in a lecture I was listening today, Swarit Vrahostra Karar, Samstuta Purusha Pashu, Niyat Karna Patiyopeta, Jatunama Gadagraja. Those were like hogs and dogs and camels and asses. They glorified the bigger hogs, dogs, camels, and asses, but they never glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who holds a club, Gadagraja. We have to understand that most people presently, they don't know anything about spiritual life. And because they don't know anything about spiritual life, they don't practice anything spiritual. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Daivi Mahatmanas Tumambarta, Daivin Prakritim Ashitya, Vajantanyanya Manaso, Gyatva Bhutadim Avyam. Those who are great souls are under the protection of the divine nature, Daivi Prakriti. They're fully engaged in devotional service because they know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's unborn and inexhaustible. So what are they doing? Satatam kirtayantomam yatantastradaravataha namasyantasramam bhaktya nitukta upasate. They're always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. They perpetually worship me with devotion. So they're not big business magnates. They're not controlling vast armies. They haven't been elected president of anything necessarily. It could be, but this is not the qualification. The qualification is simply to glorify Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna or Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, worship the deities, serve the devotees, and try to make the atmosphere spiritual. Then one comes under the internal energy of Krishna. But if one is not under the internal energy of Krishna, one will necessarily be under the external energy of Krishna. And according to the modes of nature one has acquired in one's past life and in this life, one will necessarily choose a leader who's bigger, better, faster, stronger, brighter than they are. But anyone who's not engaged in Krishna consciousness has more or less, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, because sometimes Prabhupada would say, quote verses like that, and he'd be criticized. Why are you criticizing all these people? Why not be nice to these people? They're sincere. They're nice people too. They're trying to help. But Srila Prabhupada would say, I'm not criticizing them. Krishna is criticizing them. I'm simply repeating what Krishna said. So we should be compassionate, but when Krishna says, Svavit Rahostra Karara, he's not criticizing them unjustly, nor is he trying to criticize the animals, like the dog. Nowadays, if you beat the cow, or even if you beat a person, no one will complain. But if you beat a dog, then the police will immediately come and arrest you. That no one will tolerate that. So because the dog has a good quality, the dog is faithful, it goes and it wags its tail and pledges to its master, I will serve you faithfully, as long as you give me a bowl of food every day. Everything's between us is quite close. And Srila Prabhupada compares that to the person with a college or advanced education who goes door to, we could say, interview to interview wagging their tail, saying, I'm a faithful dog. I've been trained up. Whatever you do, whatever you tell me I do, please hire me. I will offer my services to you faithfully, following my acharya, the dog acharya. And similarly, the other animals mentioned there, they're also have their good qualities or their faults. But that's how people will be trained up. If they're not trained up in Krishna consciousness, they must be trained up to become like one of those animals. Because no one can survive in this world without some kind of leader to follow. And if one is not following Krishna's instructions, one has to follow someone else's instructions. So if one believes that there's no God, then, as the Avanti Brahmin said, Kamadinam katidas palitas dorni deshas desha mayi jata mai nakaruna no pushanti. One must serve the material nature. There's no alternative. The soul cannot exist independently of either the internal energy of Krishna or the external energy. So if one is not under the internal energy, one must be under the external energy. And the external energy, there's always someone who's bigger, better, faster, stronger, more intelligent, who we have to follow, either in the material energy or in the spiritual energy. Unfortunately, our so-called leaders, for the most part, in the general society, are misleaders. Not that they may be very sincere people. They may believe that they're trying to do good, but because they lack knowledge, they don't know what really good is. Prabhupada gives the example of someone's drowning in the ocean and someone jumps in to save them, but only knows how to pull off their hat and coat and pants and swim back to the shore and proclaim they've saved the person. But actually, they've only saved their coat, hat, and pants, and the person themselves, they drowned in the ocean. So at the end of the day, for all the good work and all the good sentiment that people have towards each other, what to speak of the bad work and the bad sentiment, at the end of the day, if one comes back into the actually comes back into the animal species of life, in their next life, what kind of service or help was that? However sincere and compassionate that help may have been, but it's done in ignorance, and therefore it's not actually very helpful. Therefore, Jnana Chakshush is necessary to understand, ultimately, as Prabhupada writes in the 4th chapter, in the last verse, that Krishna consciousness is simple. There's the soul, there's the super soul, there's material nature, and there's a process of getting out of the material nature. And that's the whole philosophy. And everything else in the Bhagavad Gita is meant to explain that, to deepen our understanding of it. Therefore, Kshetra Kshetragya Jnanam Antara Jnana Chakshusha. This Jnana Chakshush is very valuable. Therefore, we have to honor Bhagavad Gita because it is actually non-different from Krishna. And then it says, Kshetra Kshetragya Jnanam Antara Jnana Chakshusha Bhuta Prakriti Moksham Cha. So we have the Bhuta, the living entities ourselves, and we're in the Prakriti, material nature. And there's Moksham. There's actually a process of getting out of it. Ye vidur yantate param. And not only we get out of the material energy, but also there's a process of knowledge by which we can approach, yanti means approach, param, the supreme destination, namely Krishna. The same process which will free us from our material entanglement will also bring us to Krishna. It is not that we begin with sadhana bhakti and we end with yoga. Sometimes the devotees have something called bridge preaching. So bridge preaching is very nice. Sometimes it brings people from one side of the bridge over to Krishna. But we also have to be careful that we don't, in the process of bringing people over to the other side, that we don't go over to the other side ourselves. That we introduce Krishna consciousness, and at the same time, some of the things that people have to offer are helpful also. After all, Krishna doesn't condemn either karma yoga or jnana yoga or hatha yoga or astanga yoga. He doesn't condemn those. He explains them in Bhagavad Gita, but they're not better than bhakti yoga. We don't want to exchange 100 million euros for 50 cents, but we want to offer people who have 50 cents 100 million euros. Therefore, ye viduryanti te param, that we want to give this philosophy in such a way that people can understand it and accept it. Of course, in Kali Yuga, such a simple philosophy is very difficult for people to appreciate because they're so complicated. They think, how can it be so simple? It's so simple, forget it. Besides that, it won't help me with my objective. My objective is to conquer the material nature, to become the strongest, to become the fastest, to become the most famous, to become the wealthiest. That's why I advented myself. Only the fools who deride me think I've descended in this human-like form. They don't know my future domination of all that be. Therefore, such persons are really not very receptive. Matter of fact, if we try to explain too much to people who have that idea, they'll get angry. They'll think I had a nice day until I met you. My plans were all unfolding, and now you've simply discouraged me. Therefore, most people are trained up like that. So kirtan, when Krishna appears, is the holy name. And people don't realize they're associating with Krishna. Krishna is appearing before them. And if they're in a good mood after taking prasadam, and the devotees are nice to them, they may think, oh, that's nice music. Maybe I should listen to it at home. And then Krishna gradually gets into their heart and they can't get him out. It's like Hiranyakashipu, as you heard that story. When he wanted to perform austerities to conquer the universe, then him and his baby brother, Hiranyaksha, they went into the forest to perform austerities. And they began to standing on the tips of their toes and meditating on their future conquest of the universe. But the demigods had already understood that Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha were going to perform severe austerities to conquer the universe. So they went to Lord Brahma and asked for his help. Luckily, Narada Muni and Parvati Muni were there at that time, and they said, "Don't worry, we'll take care of it." So Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha went into the forest with hands raised, began their austerity for the next 120 years of the demigods. Narada Muni came as a little bird with his companion Parvati Muni, as another little bird, and at the top of their bird lungs began to shout out, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Of course, Hiranyakashipu was in no mood to hear about Vasudeva. And he couldn't concentrate because these two birds were screaming the name of Narayan in his ears. So he picked up a rock and he threw it at the birds and they flew away. And he went back to his meditation. And then the little birds came back and at the top of their lungs started to shout out, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Hiranyakashipu was, practically speaking, was ready to pick up a mountain and throw it at these little birds, but only a rock was nearby. So he threw a rock at the birds again, they flew away. So the whole afternoon, that was going on. So Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha thought, this is not a good day to begin austerities. So they went home. So Hiranyakashipu's mind was so disturbed because he couldn't get Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya out of his mind. So he decided to get some comfort from his wife. But even when he was having some relation with his wife, throughout his mind was still chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So because that time he conceived Prahlad Maharaj, while he was in his mind, he was chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Therefore, he conceived a devotee instead of a demon like himself. So this chanting is so powerful that if we go out and chant Hare Krishna, those who don't put their hands over their ears and hear the holy name, they go home and maybe they're hearing, they're talking, they're watching television, and in their mind they're hearing Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. So therefore Krishna has entered into their heart and he won't leave so easily. Although people will be it's very difficult for the people to understand this philosophy, this simple philosophy, that their body is changing and that their selves as a spiritual being are eternal, and that there's an eternal supreme person who we have an eternal relationship with. And still, if we introduce the chanting and the prasadam, and the devotees are nice to people, because people are simply looking for other people who are nice to them. Because to be nice to someone means you have to appreciate them. So that's a little difficult. Appreciate or accept. So in the advancement of devotional service, the first we have to understand how we're very tiny, how we're actually instruments for Krishna, how Krishna is so wonderful and so kind and so beautiful, how he's the best friend of everyone, and that we should also become the friends of everyone. Then we can learn how tolerance, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, that we won't be looking for the faults in everyone, we'll be trying to find something we can appreciate in them. And if we find something we can appreciate in others, then the result will be that the people will actually like us. Then we'll actually be friends of others. Generally speaking, most people are not looking for someone to criticize them. That happens naturally. There's plenty of people in this world to criticize each other. But it's very rare to find a genuine person who actually can appreciate some good quality that someone has. And people are looking for people to appreciate them. When a girl meets a boy on the street, or a boy meets a girl, the girl doesn't immediately say, well, did you know, I mean, I have to be honest with you, you're ugly. And the boy doesn't say, really, I want to be, let's be truthful from the beginning. I think you're pretty ugly too. Not only that, but I think you're stupid. Let's have a relationship with each other. No, people are looking for someone to admire them, to appreciate them, to offer service to them. Then their relationship develops in a more friendly, intimate way. So similarly, if we want to attract people to Krishna in an effective way, we also have to appreciate others. We also have to tolerate others and accept others, because ultimately what's manifested before us is not the soul, but the modes of nature that they've acquired in general. And therefore we can at least accept people who are trying to approach Krishna. If we cannot tolerate those who are trying to approach Krishna, if we can't find something to appreciate for those who are approaching Krishna, then it's very difficult to get people to accept us. And without accepting us, they cannot begin to accept either the process of devotional service and what to speak of Krishna. Even if we go on Harinam and we distribute prasadam, then generally we smile at people when we try to offer them some prasadam. We don't give them a mean look. You rascal. You don't deserve this mercy. No, we're friendly to people, and we appreciate people. Just like there is one devotee here who distributes books, and her line with people sometimes is usually that I've noticed you're what a good vibe you have. There's something special about you. Or as Vaishya Prabhu would say, you seem like a very spiritual person. What spiritual thing are you doing? And they'd say, well, I play tennis. I knew it, you were spiritual. I knew you were a spiritual person. So find something to appreciate in others, not only the people on the outside we're trying to distribute a book to, or get them to take some prasadam, whatever. But also we should appreciate the devotees too. We should try to find something good within the devotees and try to tolerate what we think is not so good and accept them that they're trying to approach Krishna. Then Krishna will give us the intelligence to have a peaceful mind. And then we'll be able to understand also that we're not this body, that all the good qualities and all the not so good qualities we may be manifested are not our qualities. They're the qualities given to us by the modes of material nature, or the qualities given us by the divine nature. But they're not our qualities. They're the manifestation of Krishna and his energies. And we're simply trying to become an instrument for the divine energy rather than an instrument for the external energy. So I'll stop there because it's a little late. Thank you for your attention. Any questions or comments?
Maharaj, may I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Yes. So Maharaj, you are leading the group which is harmonizing the lines of authority in ISKCON. And as I understand, in these GBC meetings, you're going to be presenting the actual not plan, should we say the conclusion to the harmonizing the lines of authority? Could you please, in short, kind of tell us what did you came to, because this seemed to be a very important topic?
Well, I'm part of the group that's doing this particular endeavor, but basically speaking, we made an idea. We'll try to go in like a needle and out like something other than a needle. So we're still trying to go in like a needle. So what we're presenting to the GBC in Mayapur this year is that those who are specifically initiating gurus within our society, that their projects that they create should be authorized. That's more or less the basis of it. That the GBC was created, as far as I understand, mainly to oversee the activities of all the devotees in the society, with the idea of engaging them in the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu collectively. But due to the different ideas, our society is not such a collective effort, because we don't have a clear vision of what we're trying to accomplish and how we're going to do it together. And therefore, to fill that lack of a unified vision, we have many leaders in our society, especially those who are initiating gurus, and with their own ideas of how to serve Krishna, how to spread Krishna consciousness, but they don't necessarily have a unified idea. So this is just a small attempt of creating some process of authorization of projects, so that the projects can hopefully be eventually unified under one authority, with one vision, one mission, one purpose, namely to effectively distribute Krishna consciousness to others, and to help those within our society come to a more elevated, higher levels of realization, so that we can eventually realize we're not this body and our eternal relation with Krishna, and help others do the same. Does that explain it briefly?
Yes, Maharaj, very clearly. Thank you. Very concisely and very clearly. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. We can end 3 minutes early. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gurudev.
I think we have one question from Krishna.
Yeah.
Chandra.
Hare Krishna, dear Guru Maharaj, I have one question. Я буду говорить по-русски. Вы всегда делаете акцент на Бхагавад-гите, и ваше повествование всегда очень сладкое. Но сейчас доступны книги предыдущих ачарьев, и преданные изучают их, такие как Гопала Чампу, Расамрита Синху, книги Бхактивинода Такура. Можно ли посещать эти санги?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, you always make a main accent on Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's very sweet, the lectures that you give. But right now, the books of the previous acharyas, such as Gopala Champu, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and others have become available, and devotees discuss them, read them and discuss them. Should we visit such sanghas where those books are discussed?
As long as they follow the same philosophy as the Bhagavad Gita, there's no difference between those books and Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is the summary of those books. But unless we understand Bhagavad Gita, it'll be very difficult to understand the other books. Now, I personally try to read every day Bhagavad Gita, but also Nectar of Devotion, also Chaitanya Charitamrita, also Srimad Bhagavatam, and Krishna book. And I read other books too. But I wouldn't understand Rupa Goswami's 64 aspects of devotional service unless I understood that who I'm doing the devotional service to and why I'm doing it. But if I read Nectar of Devotion, if I read it with the background of Krishna consciousness, with the Bhagavad Gita, then it becomes reasonable. Bhagavad Gita is the beginning book. It doesn't stand by itself, but the other books build on it, but Bhagavad Gita is the foundation. If we don't have a foundation, the other books will crumble too. They won't stand by themselves. They stand on the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. They're not in competition with each other. One is building on the other. Is that all right?
Да. Спасибо большое, Гуру Махарадж. Харе Кришна.
The difficulty is that sometimes it's advertised that if we read these other esoteric books, we can jump to Krishna over Bhagavad Gita and Nectar of Devotion and Nectar of we could just jump to Krishna. We don't need these other books. They're old, dry philosophy. But Bhagavad Gita, when Sanjaya was remembering it, he was in ecstasy. Now, we don't read, when we read Bhagavad Gita, if we're not in ecstasy, we should probably keep on reading it until we become in ecstasy. Then we'll be able to understand the other parts of our philosophy too, much more easily. Nirguna Das.
Maharaj, what does Krishna mean when he says the Indriyani Paranyaur, Indriya Paramana? What does it mean that the senses are higher than matter?
Well, do you think are you conscious?
Yeah,
Is your body conscious of you?
yeah. No, I don't know.
Oh, you must be better, you must be higher than the body. So, and then again, we ourselves as soul, we're depending on higher than the body. We listen to our mind and our intelligence to figure out what the body is telling us. We hear some noise in the body, immediately we start thinking, what is it telling us? We have to search our intelligence to figure it out. So higher than the body is the mind that we're experiencing the body with, and higher than the mind is the intelligence. And higher than the intelligence is the soul who's trying to figure it out. But Krishna is the one who's giving us intelligence, so higher than us is Krishna.
But does that mean that we, it makes me always think that I can maybe do something bad in the world, like I will, with my mind, I can ruin something, you know? Because the mind is much higher than the matter, so you think, you start to think maybe I can influence things, you know, and then I don't understand the hierarchy.
Well, unless we take shelter of Krishna, we want to understand everything we're doing is, one degree or another, it's wrong. Some things are worse than others, but without understanding that, without being a servant of Krishna, everything we're doing is a mistake to one degree or another. And just because we put on a dhoti, we put on tilak, or we live in a temple, doesn't mean that we're divine. It's when we're actually understanding what Krishna wants us to do and doing it with the spirit of serving him under the guidance of his representatives, that what we're doing is actually good for ourselves and good for others too. All right. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Srila Gaur Premanand.
Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna Gurudev. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, dear
Hare
Gurudev.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.